Now that it's over, it feels like Fiona and Cake Season 2 was made with a bigger picture in mind. Season 1 was incredible, but it was so focused on Simon and the multiverse that we didn't really get to dig into Fiona World or Fiona herself as a character. So I get the desire to create a season that prioritized fleshing all that out and bringing in Huntress Wizard to not only develop her as a character, but to also keep us connected to Ooh and not abandon what's become a pretty big draw to the show. I respect it. I respect Season 2. These last 2 episodes have some of my favorite moments out of the entire Adventure Time franchise. That said, my biggest takeaway from this finale is that Season 3 is going to be insane. So in this video, I really want to unpack the ending to Fiona and Cake Season 2, with Huntress seemingly merging numerous worlds together, the grand unveiling of what the rest of Fiona World actually looks like, and talk about why Hunson Abadir is paying Marshall Lee a visit, and also throw my 2 cents in on if this episode retconned together again. Let's get started. With the Kingdom of Ooh exhausting all their options to save Finn, Bubblegum turns to Minerva for help so that they can upload Finn's consciousness into a robot, using a techno coffin to get the job done. Huntress, unable to return to Ooh through the dimensional tree, turns to the various seeds of herself that were planted across the multiverse, spawning all sorts of wicked cool forms. I know Farm World Finn's kids recognize Huntress as their mom, and they don't question that she's a plant, but this doesn't mean that she was actually a living plant in the world like an Ooh. There's just an obvious striking resemblance, especially with the hair and eye color. And not to get morbid, but they could assume any weird pigmentation could be the result of dying and coming back to life, or that she just needed a shower. But really, I think they were too taken aback to really process what was happening in the moment. It's nice to have confirmation she is their mom in this world though. Unfortunately for Huntress, none of the seeds landed in Ooh, although I do believe one seed has gone unaccounted for, which feels like the show literally planting a seed for later in the story. That eventually Fiona and Cake will be back out in the multiverse and end up in a situation where Huntress can swoop in and join them on another adventure. Huntress and Witch Wizard connect to the undergrowth and locate the final remnant of the heart, Finn's wound, which is why it was said to both be killing him and keeping him alive, allowing Huntress to sprout right out of his back before he's crushed to death, and heal our boy by drawing from the life force of her other vessels across the multiverse. This whole sequence gives us a glimpse at familiar worlds like Vampire World, which seems to still be crawling with vampires, implying that Battle of Marcy didn't work out for Bonnie, and we also get to see some new worlds that I'm sure we'll explore down the road. Though these more alien worlds, like the water world that features an evergreen-ass giant, don't seem like wish-altered realities, but universes that always existed, just as Prismo talked about in Season 1. So it'd be nice to finally get a proper look at them. Also, can I just say, I adore Huntress's new design. The brighter color palettes, the blooming flowers, it's a pretty direct representation of her growth throughout the season. She's finally opening herself back up to the world and blossoming as a result. Now, when Huntress saves Finn with her vessels, there's imagery of the universes combining into one, and because it happens so quickly, it might give the impression that they've all merged together, Star Versus style. And while that's not the immediate case, I feel like they definitely would have put more emphasis on it if it was. With the revelation that the multiverse is connected through its mycorrhizal network, I'm inclined to think about these worlds as trees. And it's possible that Huntress may have just caused multiversal inoculation, that these worlds will start to combine and spill over into one another as they gradually become one, which definitely wouldn't be good and something that, going off Prismo's words, would be a weird gray area for him to deal with. But I imagine they'd have to do something, as all the worlds combining would probably lead to a catastrophic event that wipes all of them out. But hey, worlds fusing means our Finn and Farm World Finn could reunite in person. I definitely think this could be a plotline in Seasons 3 or even 4. I feel so bad for Farm World Finn's family, especially this kid. Seeing his mom respawn and wither away right before his very eyes and dragging his siblings in to see it might be one of the darkest gags in Adventure Time. It just kept getting worse for this dude. Fiona faces the music and breaks things off with Felix, acknowledging that she's been pursuing him for the wrong reasons. She felt owed a happily ever after, and that included winning back the guy who ditched her, despite the fact that Felix's issues have to deal with him and his flaws. For as much as we spend on the love triangle this season, it definitely feels like there's something still missing with Flame, but let's put a pin in that. The last thing he says to Fiona is that her cloak looks like a samurai, which is interesting because, again, she's been chasing after a fantasy, aspiring to be some sort of badass hero instead of just being herself. I think Felix's line here goes to show how they're both chasing after a fantasy, that he knows he should be alone, but he's drawn to whoever can fulfill the role of manic pixie dream girl, someone who can fix him so that he doesn't have to work on himself. Finn's soul has yet to return to his body. Thankfully, Fiona is able to connect with Finn just by thinking about him. I think traversing into the two Finn's minds during the Cosmic Owl hunt has kept them linked for the long haul, which is another thing that could come back into play down the road. I'd love to see more Fiona and Finn interactions through their Finnlepathy. Fiona works her way down to Finn's heart, finding him hiding in a chest with the show's premiere date engraved on it, and we get a heartbreaking moment where Finn confesses that he believes no one will love him like Jake did. Fiona relays everything she's learned from Huntress, albeit indirectly, informing him he does have someone who loves him like Jake did. So many people love Finn. Kingdoms will fall into disarray if he kicked the bucket now. Yet he was so clouded by grief and in his own insecurities that he couldn't see how much love still surrounds him. Hopefully, that changes moving forward. Finn wakes up and finally shares a passionate kiss with Huntress Wizard as everyone celebrates. And PB, overwhelmed and grappling with the fact she almost killed one of her best friends, passes off the crown to Peppermint Butler. She is done ruling. The episode doesn't have much time to unpack how much of a big deal this is for her character, but hey, there's always next time. Cake calls things off with Monochromacorn, and the two decide to just be friends. Cake accepts that she needs to be herself, and that also requires letting go of this relationship. Just like Fiona, Cake was forcing a relationship that she felt like she was supposed to have. She thought it'd make her more human, that she'd be perceived as normal, but now she knows she has to be herself and finding someone who fits her unconventional nature. I'm definitely rooting for Cosmic Worm. Fiona's reconciliation with Gary and Marshall moves a little quick, but whatever, they only got so much runtime, and I think everyone's exhausted of all the drama. I'm good on a Fiona earns her forgiveness arc, and would rather have them move towards something more interesting. Huntress's arc concludes with her teaching magic right out of her home, which is pretty genius. The character who struggled the most with communication is now sharing knowledge that was once gatekept from everyone, educating those to use magic without exploitation, including the Green Wizards who now have to actually learn magic. And it's in her most intimate setting. Finn's also now living with Huntress, and he has a new robot arm, complete with an axe mod inspired by Farmworld Finn. His beard is braided in a way that harkens back to the good Martin in Vampire World, or the Lich in the Dead World, who probably had his beard braided by BMO. Finn's also the most ripped he's ever been, now that he's been juiced by Huntress, so I really hope we get to see him back in action next season. Now, did this ending retcon together again? Finn's walking away with a different robot arm from when he kicked the bucket, and despite the special's implications, it doesn't seem like he'll be dying alone. If his relationship with Huntress looks anything like what they had on Farmworld, he's going to have a family of his own by the time he croaks. I'm gonna say that no, this episode didn't retcon together again. It just contextualized it a bit more. For starters, Finn can always go back to his old arm. It can be as simple as his new arm breaking in a fight, or no longer fitting as he gets older and starts to lose muscle mass. Beyond that, Together Again never really specified that Finn died alone, or denied that he lived a fulfilling life after Jake's death. Finn acknowledged he had plenty of fun after Jake left. It's just that he was so hung up on Jake's death that he struggled to fully appreciate what he had in front of him. And I think even with the developments of this season, that still makes perfect sense. Finn never got to tell Jake, his best friend, brother, and father figure, about his committed relationship with Huntress, or any of the crazy adventures he embarked on after his passing. He never got to introduce Jake to his children. Every moment had him thinking, man, I wish Jake was still here to see this. He saw everything through the lens of, what would Jake think about this instead of being present? That's why he was so stoked at finally being dead. He gets to reunite with Jake and share with him all these precious memories that Jake missed out on. It seems like Astrid will be Spirit Dream Warrior's next apprentice, as he observes Huntress from afar and recognizes that his student has become the master. I wouldn't be surprised if this actually set up another spin-off starring Astrid and Spirit Dream Warrior. That'd be a fun dynamic. We have a time skip on Fiona World that reveals the Sweet Spot has been resurrected as a thriving community center that combines everyone's passions into a place where they can share their skills with the rest of Midtown. It's definitely encouraging the viewer to get out there and engage with their own community. Cake is a model for figure drawing. Flame is teaching kids how to DJ. Despite everything that happened, Fiona, Fiddle, and Hunter are at least on speaking terms with Felix, and they're all able to work together without any issue. Which brings me back to how it feels like something is missing with Felix's character. That he has some redeeming qualities that everyone sees, save for the audience themselves. It makes it a little jarring to see everyone so buddy-buddy, even if a significant amount of time has passed. If we just got to see him actually articulate his feelings, get a look at how his brain works, and moments where we can see why Fiona and Fennel actually like him without the drama, this would feel significantly less weird. Fiona, Fennel, and Hunter discover the world that's awaiting them beyond the city, revealing that Fiona World did in fact become an entire planet after being canonized. Midtown appears to be the only modern city in the world, at least for now. But that doesn't mean it's all barren. If anything, I wouldn't be surprised if everything outside of Midtown was a more grounded version of Vu, maybe matching up different time periods and cultures. Kinda like Primal, the Ice Kingdom might have Vikings, and maybe the Fire Kingdom might be like feudal Japan. There could be anything out there. No strong magic presence doesn't mean that this planet still can't be wicked cool in its own right. They also don't have to commit to this exact shot of the planet. It could be a lot more populated than it seems, but they only drew Midtown to drive the point home that Fiona needs to get out there and explore everything the world has to offer. It appears there's a catalyst comet near the planet, and it makes sense that the canonized Fiona World would eventually get hit by one, as Scarab said they inherit everything that comes with the multiverse. Yet we didn't get to see any of that in this season. I could see this comet bringing about catastrophe as it has in the past, which would be good stakes for a final season. Let's talk about this though. With the whole love square they had going on throughout the season, I wouldn't fault anyone for reading into what Fiona, Fennel, and Hunter's dynamic could be in this scene. Obviously, all we can say for sure is that they're friends, but you know, if any cartoon stood their ground and committed to a throuple, it'd be Adventure Time. Finally, there's a post-credit scene that seems to take place prior to the time skip, showing Marshall playing in the streets when he's approached by none other than Hunson Abadir. Why is he here? Is this the Hunson we're familiar with, or a different Hunson altogether? Well, Hunson is one of those beings who predates everything, including the multiverse. So presumably, the Nightosphere does as well. And I think it's likely that those counterparts of Marcy that exist out there in the multiverse are because of wish-altered realities, meaning she wouldn't exist otherwise. So I do think this is our guy. He could have been summoned, given this graffiti of his summoning symbol nearby, and we know there is still some sort of magic in Fiona World as shown with the Wizard Eyes and Trip to Venus, so it's possible summoning Hunson from another dimension is on the table. But that just poses the question of who would know about that and why they would do it. I think it's likely that Hunson learned of Fiona World and Marshall Lee's existence and is setting his sights on the young man to take over the Nightosphere. Marshall may be considered a son by technicality and thus qualifies for the role, or maybe Hunson needs to make some sort of sacrifice that would involve Marceline, but Hunson finds it easier to just borrow a version of her that he's apathetic towards instead. Since this seems to take place before the time skip, and the new Sweet Spot building would be way more expensive to build after Fiona demolished her original location, I do wonder if Hunson might be responsible for the building's existence. I don't know what his end goal could be, but I do think it's not out of the realm possibility that he wants to team up with none other than his own counterpart, Hannah. Cake did see a future where Fiona was working for Hannah, but the twist could be that this is the result of Fiona working for both Abadirs. Plus, I'll be real, I find the prospect of the Abadirs falling in love with themselves hysterical. If that would happen with anyone in Fiona and Cake, it'd definitely be them. Also, I wonder if Abadir's interest in Marshall has anything to do with the Vampire King's essence influencing Marcy earlier in the season. Maybe this will become a bigger problem, and Hunson wants to try to transfer the essence out of Marceline, but he needs an appropriate vessel. So he sets his sights on Marshall, which in return dangles the idea of Marshall getting his vamp powers back, which may be cool, but would also be terrifying for him to go through. Either way, I do hope we get some Marcy and Marshall interaction in Season 3. And there you have it. What are your thoughts on Fiona and Cake Season 2? Let's get a dialogue going in the comments down below, and keep the conversation going by giving me a follow on Twitter and Instagram at AllSharkVox and at Roundtable Vids. If you enjoyed this video, please sort to like and subscribe to the Roundtable notifications on so you never miss a video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. Peace!